Glad to have you back on Nigeria Decides on Plus TV Africa. Now, the Nigerian agricultural sector has witnessed significant transformation over the past few decades. The changes range from new entrants into the sector to new and improved technologies.
And these changes have unfortunately not been accompanied by changes on the institutional and policy front. What should stakeholders do, and how should they ensure the right policies and bills are passed to strengthen the sectors? Joining us to do justice to these matters, we have Teleola Kola Edun, Program Coordinator, Context Global Development. Thank you very much for still staying with us.
Thank
and
you.
we also have joining us is Emmanuel Ijewere, Vice President, Nigerian Agribusiness Group. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we understand that identifying and assessing the magnitude of investments needed in the agricultural sector across the value chain is important to then modernize the sector, isn't it? But we need bills, we need policies and strong implementation. But really, what is the role of the private sector in ensuring that they push for the engagement to have an enabling environment to thrive? Your thoughts?
Yes, first, it must be understood that the major players, the main players, and indeed the front runners in the agricultural value chain in the entire platform for agriculture is the private sector. Government are only policy formulators, and they're there to support you to achieve it. But that is missing. To start with, agriculture starts with farming. Farming takes place in the local governments. How many of the 774 local governments are in operation today? How many of them are able to bring these farmers together? 90% of these people are very hard-working people, but with little education, little opportunities. It's as if they are condemned to poverty, but they continue to do it and feed this nation. But that's not being recognized. And this has discouraged a number of young people, but that's changing, I must quickly add. However, to bring the private sector, every farmer is a private sector person. He wants to make a profit. He's invested something there, and he needs to get money back and feed his family, improve his life. So when you talk about the private sector, everybody that is not in government, in policy formulation, is a private sector person.
But how to have a stronger conversation from this sector to push it to the table of our lawmakers and ensure that we have the bills become law? Because let's take a look at the bill that is just before the House, the warehouse bill and fertilizer, and a whole lot more that's still pending.
Yep.
And other bills that should come into place, but we are not having the conversations.
Because there are no promoters. What's happened is that I've attended the various committee sessions of the National Assembly, Senate, and the House. You have the FEPSAN bill, that is this fertilizer bill. You have the SEDAN bill, which is the seed bill. Those two, I understand one of them has gone to the president's table, and it's been there for a long time. But before it even got there, the journey was so long and tedious. And so, in actual fact, it is because those in government, the legislature itself, does not really connect themselves to what effect will this bill have on my own constituents.
They don't have an understanding
They
of how
do
much.
not understand how much, what effect it will have. It's taken a long time to get it there. Whereas if it was a bill of a private club or something, they would promote it, they would be there pressurizing for it. But this is for the good of the farmer. Nobody speaks for them.
Tele, can we get your thoughts on that as well?
I was actually thinking about that, right? When we're talking about these bills, who is it for? The farmers. Do they even understand what the bill is about? Who has brought it down granularly to their level to say, if you come together to push, but do they understand the consequences or the objectives or the benefits to them?
Okay, so essentially you're saying there's a need for more sensitization. It's not just about drawing up bills and saying this is what we want to do. Do we even understand what we're doing? Now, that aside, let me bring you back to something you said before we got back on this segment about the private sector players in the agricultural sector. Can you also bring us up to speed on who really identify them? And then a two-pronged question now. I'd also want you to tell us how easy it is to operate as a private sector player in the agricultural sector in Nigeria.
Let me start from there. the second question.
Okay.
I would say it's not easy as a private sector player in Nigeria to operate. Now, Nigeria is going further down on the ranking of IFCs doing business. We're going further down. Businesses are packing up and moving. Why is that? We can talk about tax, we can talk about certification. There's so many things that hinder businesses. A lot of infrastructure problem. There's a lot of transportation problem, poor road network, right? As a private sector player, except I'm going into technology, where I can sit and power myself from a little room and get my product or my service across, it's almost impossible to run a business successfully in Nigeria without much incentivization or much help from the government.
How bad is the case of agriculture?
I will use one of my clients, and I wouldn't go into further detail. He is running a power generator 24 hours. To power his technology that would ensure rapid multiplication of his seeds. Now, how much money is he going to make after he puts his operational costs into perspective? What is the cost of running his business? How much is he selling it for? Is the market profitable for him? Is it not easier to just pack up? But then these are people they're so passionate about what they do. They're so passionate about the people that are benefiting from them.
Apart from the farmers, who else is a private sector player in agriculture?
Right now, you can talk about the agri-technology players. You can talk about the bankers. You can talk about transporters, the logistics company who moves the products from the north to the south. Right? There's so many other players like that in the private sector that have seen opportunity to make benefit or improve the system as a whole.
But if they cannot impact policy, we can't go anywhere.
Yeah, but you see, you asked her a question which she answered very well. But I'll give you a practical example of what really is the situation. We have the poultry industry. You slaughter the chicken. Within 30 minutes, you need to freeze that chicken to ensure that it maintains all its nutrients without deterioration. You blast freeze it. Then after that, you put it in a cold room at 10 degrees, minus 10. It must be there permanently.
Frozen.
It must never, that's right. To be able to do that in other parts of the world, the light is always there, 24/7. For me, I have to have a generator which I run from 12 midnight to 12 noon.
This is your experience?
Yes.
Okay.
Switch it off. 12 noon to 12 midnight, the other one is running. The third one is waiting just in case one of them breaks down or is going in for service. You cannot afford to allow this chicken to thaw, otherwise it's gone. So the price of that chicken, it may be as frozen as the one that was imported, but what went into making it and putting that kind of state in Nigeria is so huge.
If we have people like you who are actually going to this extent to preserve chicken, why then do we have to import chicken?
Now, the problem is that it's business. There are a number of people, there's a ban. I mean, particularly on chicken, there's a ban on importation of chicken. But when you look at the price at which this chicken are brought from abroad, or let us quickly add to it that the chicken that is brought out from abroad actually are not really fit, most of them are not fit for human consumption because they have been preserved with formalin, which is used for human body. Now, that's by the way, but nevertheless, the chicken arrives here a lot cheaper because the example I gave you just now, in those countries taken for granted. Here you have to burn diesel. At the time we started business, diesel was about 15 naira per litre. Today it's about 230 naira per litre. We've not increased our prices at that rate. The bank now is charging over 25% interest. Put all those together. So doing business is a nightmare, but you have to remain stubborn to continue to do it.
Could I add a little bit on this, especially when it comes to seeds? Now, going back to crops and not livestock.
Yes.
The life of a crop starts with the seed, right? Now, are people really ready to pay for quality seed? Right? Am I really willing to pay for that? Because you're asking the cost of doing business. There's so many companies that are seed companies. to produce high quality seeds that would push the value chain forward, they're going to have to invest a lot to ensure that their seeds are viable, that is disease resistant, that it's not rotten every time you plant, it's not prone to mosaic virus or whatever viruses are infecting these crops. Right? So now if we don't have companies that are willing to invest in this, the whole value chain, we won't have substantial or successful value chains, you know, to ensure certification or any kind of thing. And so it costs a lot to do that. But is the farmer willing to pay for this high quality seed?
Let's take it up from there. She gave an example of seed now. The one that we popularly know is the tomato. All of us know what tomato is. Now, as of today, the last research that was done is that most of our farmers use the tomato of last year that that they dried it up, got the seed, and they planted it. That is no seed. That is certainly not seed. No. Now, the seed that she was talking about, which is the hybrid seed, which is the high quality seed, is the one she was talking about.
Has a stronger resistance level
absolutely.
And all of that.
Now, what's the difference between them? The farmer uses the same one he used last year, dries it up and puts it in the ground this year. His yield on 1 hectare is between 4 and 8 metric tons per hectare. Use the one that she was talking about. On that same 1 hectare, you will get somewhere between 30 and 40 metric tons per hectare. But the problem is that that farmer is unable to upgrade. How much is it? This seed he's talking about is almost free to him because it was a waste from his farm last year. But this one will cost somewhere to going for that to be about 2,000 or 3,000 naira to be able to put this out there, to use that.
So what sort of incentive do you think we should have this time around when we are even looking at the seeds? Should it be coming at a subsidized rate? What happens in advanced climes?
Before you even do that, first of all, let us reduce the actual disconnect between government and the private sector. Government is supposed to look at what is good for these people, what is good for my people.
But how can we have an understanding? Because I listened to one of the reports by the Minister of Agriculture, Audogbe, and they said, well, Nigeria is producing as much as 6 million tons of local rice. And I beg to say that that is a fallacy and it isn't true. But if we don't understand what value addition is all about, we don't have competitiveness of our local agricultural products at local level, international level, regional level, then how do we get to improve? Because we don't yet have an understanding. Even the Minister of Agriculture has not done anything new to improve on rice. Talk less of having to say the ban on rice importation is going to assist the local farmers.
One of the biggest problems is to go back to what Abiola said. You cannot shave a man's head behind his back. He must be there. You do not come up with any agricultural policy without getting the players, the farmers, the operators, the transporters, the logistics people involved in it, in formulating that policy. But what we hear is that a policy has been formulated by government and everybody claps for it. The time comes for implementation. The people who are supposed to implement it were not part of that policy. That's exactly the problem we keep on finding.
Why do we then have this disconnect? Because from what I know, we should have agricultural extension officers who act as the middlemen between the government and the farmers. Don't we have those in Nigeria?
The answer to that is look at the budget. First, the budget of Nigeria as of today, look at what goes to the agricultural sector. It's one of the lowest. One of the lowest. Africa and Maputo took a resolution to which Nigeria signed that 10% of the budget should go into agriculture because Africa recognized the fact that agriculture produces jobs, produces security. It makes your GDP is meaningful. When we say GDP that has no effect on the common man and improving his life is a useless GDP. So Africa recognized that. Nigeria signed on it. In the past 5 years or 6 years, Nigeria has not gone beyond 2.1%.
Telola, quickly now, we are talking about the United Nations 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and then the Malabo Declaration on Accelerated Agricultural Growth and Transformation. Now, we are signatories to all of these. Do you think we even are going to be able to, at the end of the day, when this tenure of these plans elapse, we'll be able to say we've met anything at all?
We cannot totally say that progress has not been made. It would be very unfair to the government to say that nothing has been done in the tenure of the incumbent president. However, there is room for growth. We are so far behind. One, we're still at subsistence farming. Mechanized farming is only in the hands of a few. Mm-hmm. How do we empower even gender equality? We can take it back to the Sustainable Global Goals. Gender inequality is a huge issue, but how can we reduce that in Nigeria? It's through agriculture. There's so many things that are tied to the agricultural goals that, if well done, could improve on so many other aspects.
Look at our production of cocoa, look at our production of rice, look at our production of cassava, and a whole lot more.
We can't, I do understand completely. There is a huge gap. The desire and the need, for example, for cassava is far outweighs what we're producing. We're not doing as well as we can. There's so much that can be done in terms of empowering our farmers, in terms of financing the value chain, in terms of bringing different intermediary players, empowering intermediary players. There's so much that can be done, and I know the government can do it. But what...
In your assessment, then, which policies will you now say we should have to drive these lines of development?
Okay, take for instance, Kwara State. Government can do something in that particular state to empower the women and to empower the men, such as giving youth, even more so, access to land and technology. There's need for technological advancements in our agriculture. We can put a huge infrastructure, huge processing, whatever it takes in Kwara State, in Oyo State. There's so much that can be done. There can be educating and empowering these people on agriculture and its advancements.
It boils down to identifying places where we know that we can actually do a lot more in agriculture and having processing plants in those places.
You can say that. There are several states in Nigeria that are known for particular crops. It thrives there. What can we do to empower those states to ensure that we can begin to export? Are we meeting certification standards? Is NASC being empowered to certify to ensure that we are meeting even our local need, not to even talk of export?
Talking about local need, we know that last year, 2018, there was this report that Nigeria had been proclaimed the poverty capital of the world. And I want to tie that to the SDGs that you spoke about. We know that goal 1 is zero poverty. Where are we? Because someone may be watching and asking us, possibly waiting for us to ask the critical question, have we fed ourselves?
Talk less of export.
Yes, it's not just about cash crops, it's not just about making money. How have we attained that subsistence in agriculture such that families have food, 3 square meals a day? And if we haven't gotten there, what essentially is the problem?
And remember that a local bag of rice costs 17,000 naira.
And it's going up.
Now,
That's right.
I would say that as of today, relative to a number of African countries, we're able to feed ourselves. But that window will soon shut. Why? Because those who have kept this going and have accepted poverty as a way of life are dying away. The younger people are not coming in at the same rate. And very soon, you will now have this gap that exists there. So a lot of things need to be done in an accelerated manner to get the younger people, better educated people coming into it. But it cannot be done unless first and foremost, the state governments, because it's not a federal government issue. Federal government doesn't have land for agriculture. It's the states, and they control the local governments as well. If the states believe that it is important to improve the lives of our people, create jobs for them, make them more useful, and at the end of the day, empower them to be more profitable. And the state will benefit from the taxes they will get from these people. How much tax do they get from the farmers today? Because they are so poor anyway. So if they have that in their head, if they have that paradigm shift that we need to help these people, because at the end of the day, they will be in a position to pay taxes. They don't have that. So they don't even understand. The government, the various state governments are the big problems. They do not understand.
Emmanuel, now to make them understand now, some research has said that the overall developing country investment gap in the agricultural sector is about $90 billion annually.
Okay.
Now, if we want to hold the government by the horn or by the neck or whatever language they would understand, what level of budgetary allocation should we be looking towards now? Because it's still poorly in single digits and at low levels at that.
That research has been done, that given a country like Nigeria, we need a minimum of 10%. That was agreed. But that being said, that is only a figure. Before you even, that 10% could be allocated, it will come out of the budget, but never go to where it's supposed to go. Before it goes, there must be a proper planning that these are the goals we want to achieve. And wherever we put the money will be towards achieving that goal. The goal is creating jobs, empowering our people, economic development, bring people back home, discourage our young people from going to the cities.
What do you expect of the next Minister of Agriculture who is coming into play, especially in line with policy formulation and interaction with the farmers?
The minister is an appointee of the president.
Yes, but what do you expect? He has to deliver on his mandate.
He can only deliver with the kind of instruments he's given to work with. Now, Audu Ogbe was a private sector player for a very long time. He came with a lot of enthusiasm, with understanding of the situation, because he has one of the biggest farmers in Nigeria, and he still is. But when you saw what the allocations were for the ministry, barely enough to even pay salaries. Go to the Minister of Agriculture. Sometimes you don't have light.
If he can't achieve this, then isn't he just speaking gibberish when he says we can achieve X, Y, Z, but we are not delivering?
But he has transmitted from being a farmer or a Greek player into being a politician.
Okay.
So that's all I would say.
Now, we're wrapping up, but then let us talk about some of the things that the present government has done to develop the agricultural sector. We know that there's been the Green Alternative Roadmap. It's as if we woke up and we found that, the price of oil is dipping and we just have to go back to agriculture. And then we also have the homegrown feeding program that is essentially for people to go back to subsistence agriculture. Now, how well did we fare with this program, Stella?
Well, I can't speak entirely to these programs because I don't fully comprehend. But I would say, in a sense, judging from where I stand, that we have a long way to go. There is a lot more that needs to be done. The farmers that I deal with on a regular basis are not beneficiaries of any of this. There is nothing that they benefit. I work in the cassava yam sector. They don't know about all this, right? So what is being done, one, to incentivize the people? What are their benefits for being a part of this? Where is the money going? Who can justify how it's being spent? Who takes what and what has been done? It has to come clean. Right now, we're in the phase of politicking. We're showing what we have done. Where the government is putting it out there. We've built train from Lagos to Ibadan, we've done Abeokuta,
yes,
we are doing this, we're doing this.
But
we have not heard so much about the agricultural sector.
And what has been done. But then we know that there's the school feeding program that allows every child in public schools to be fed once a day. And we're told that it is homegrown products that are used for all of those. And we know that a lot of money has been pumped into it. So the value chain, by the time you trace it, it goes back to the farmers, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the school feeding thing is a very good project because it encourages an off-taker's value chain. In other words, like you said, is the farmer that will eventually produce all the food stuff that will be used and processed for these children. I agree. I mean, that's a very good idea. However, the fact still remains, how did we arrive at, for example, you want to give eggs to children in school, which I think is one of the easiest to do. The challenge you have here is that we're not producing enough eggs in the country. Our poultry industry is in trouble because we don't have enough maize. We don't have enough soya to feed our chicks. The prices are so high. In a short while, once you start feeding them with eggs and you don't have enough eggs, what will happen is that somebody will come up with the idea, let us import some eggs from India. That means that the groundwork itself was not prepared. One of the policies that should have been done is that in the maize industry, for example, over 40% of the maize these our farmers grow in sweat gets destroyed because that value chain has not been fixed. When they harvest their maize, you're supposed to help them dry it and keep them in silos. There are 12 silos built by the federal government all over Nigeria. They are all empty because they have not been able to come up with a formula where these silos can be filled up. And maize is seasonal because we don't have enough irrigation system. So between the month of April and the month of October, they have plenty of maize and until December. But at this present moment, the price is going up steadily. But you eat chicken every day. We don't have to wait for the season. So those are the issues that
Emmanuel, quickly now, as we are wrapping up conversation, in just your assessment on your scorecard, how do you think the ban of importation of certain food products have played so far in the last 4 years?
There has been no ban that has been a ban. All you have done is to put money in some people's pockets because the ban only encourages the smugglers. And then some of the security system becomes big players in that field. Their wives go into that kind of business.
They are seizures. So, don't you think that makes any sense?
Seizures. Well, I'm not looking at the seizures I see on television. I rather look at what I see in the market because they are all there.
Thank you so much, Emmanuel.
Well, for me, I would say, like you rightly said, there's a lot of smuggling going in. As much as we try to put a ban, police officers are making money at our borders, getting these things in. I see these cars coming into Lagos. How did they get here?
And it boils down to the right policies and making sure that we implement them to the latter. Thank you so much, Telola Kola Edun, Program Coordinator, Context Global Development, for your thoughts on the program. Very well appreciated. Thank you so much as well, Emmanuel Ijewere, Vice President, Nigerian Agribusiness Group. Great work you're doing.
Okay. Now, what policies would you think would improve the agricultural sector? Well, it's interesting and we would like to have your thoughts shared with us on all our social media platforms. We'll be back in just a moment. The conversation continues and our focus for today is agriculture.
Don't go away.